In 1983, the Indian government signed off on two dreams in the same year. File 1. Build India's own missiles, all of them, from anti-tank to ballistic. File 2. Build India's own fighter jet to replace the crash-prone MiG-21. Two programs, born the same year, same country, same system, same bureaucracy, same budget pressures. A perfect experiment, run for 40 years. Here's how the twins turned out. The missile program, completed, inducted, exported. Its children now carry multiple warheads, fly hypersonic, and in May 2025, shot enemy drones and missiles out of the sky in a real war, on live television. The fighter program, 40 years on, the Air Force chief was caught on camera telling its maker, "I have no confidence." Same DNA, opposite lives. Why can India build world-class missiles, but not its own fighter jet? The answer isn't talent. It's a story about one scientist, one accidental blessing, one orphan with 4 parents, and the hardest machine human beings have ever made. The missile twin got lucky on day 1. It got a father. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam, fresh from leading India's first satellite launch vehicle at ISRO, was brought in to run the missile labs in 1983. The plan on the table was cautious: develop one missile, then the next. The defense minister asked a different question: why not all of them at once? So India launched the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. 5 missiles simultaneously: ballistic, surface-to-air, anti-tank. Madness on paper. But Kalam built something more important than missiles: a culture. He'd learned it the hard way in 1979, when his first satellite launch crashed into the sea. His chief, Satish Dhawan, faced the press and took the blame himself. A year later, when it succeeded, Dhawan pushed Kalam forward to take the credit. Kalam ran his missile labs on that exact code. Young scientists handed terrifying responsibility, labs, industry, and universities wired into one consortium, freedom to fail, with ruthless reviews. Failures were treated as data, not disgrace. One team, one boss, one mission. Hold that thought, because the other twin got the opposite. In 1988, Prithvi flew. In '89, Agni. And the world responded by slamming the door. The Missile Technology Control Regime, the Western club controlling missile tech, cut India off. Components, materials, guidance systems denied. It was meant to kill the program. It did the opposite. Kalam's consortium built every denied component at home. Gyroscopes, propellants, guidance. Slower? Yes. But by the time the sanctions era ended, India owned the entire technology chain, screw by screw. And notice something deeper. The missile program's greatest advantage, disguised as a curse. There was never an import option. Nobody sells you ballistic missiles. No Rafale of intercontinental missiles exists. The strategic forces couldn't shop abroad, so India had to succeed, and every rupee, every review, every failure fed one funnel. As we showed in our episode, Why India Buys and Never Invents, every time the checkbook is taken away, India invents. The fighter jet never got that gift. The checkbook stayed open, and it bled the program for 40 years. Now, meet the other twin. Sanctioned in 1983, the light combat aircraft didn't even begin full development until 1993, a decade lost to committees. And unlike the missile program's one-boss structure, the jet was born an orphan with 4 parents. One agency to design it, HAL to build it, a third lab to develop its engine, and an air force that kept revising what it wanted. When everyone is responsible, no one is. The scoreboard is brutal. First flight, 2001, 18 years in. Initial operational clearance, 2011. Final clearance, 2019, 36 years after sanction. And the cost of every lost year had a body count. The MiG-21s the Tejas was meant to replace kept flying for 4 more decades. The jet India's own pilots called the flying coffin, killing around 200 pilots in crashes, while their replacement grew old in development. To be fair, the 1998 nuclear sanctions gutted the program mid-flight. Foreign partners on fly-by-wire walked out overnight. Indian engineers rebuilt it alone, brilliantly. The Tejas that exists today is a good aircraft. That's what makes the story worse. The talent was never the problem. So what was? 2 things. One is physics, the other is a spreadsheet. First, the physics, because honesty demands it. A fighter jet is genuinely harder than a missile. A missile flies once, for minutes, and dies. A fighter engine must run for thousands of hours at over 1,500 degrees, hotter than the melting point of its own blades, with a human strapped to it. Those turbine blades are grown as single crystals of metal, one flawless atomic structure, because any boundary between crystals becomes a crack at that temperature. Count the nations that have independently mastered that entire chain. America, Britain, Russia, France, and, recently and painfully, China. And China is the proof of difficulty. With 10 times India's research and development budget and stolen blueprints, its WS-10 engine took a quarter-century to mature. Early versions needed overhaul every 30 hours. Its top-line WS-15 matured only in 2023. This is why India's Kaveri engine falling short, 80 kilonewtons against 90 needed, isn't a scandal. It's the norm for this technology. If physics were the whole story, the tale would end here, sad but blameless. It isn't, because physics doesn't explain the spreadsheet. Here's the difference no one says out loud. Every time the fighter program slipped, India bought its way out. Mirages in the 80s, Su-30s in the 90s and 2000s, Rafales in the 2010s. Each import was individually sensible. Collectively, they were a 40-year anesthetic. The pain that should have forced the system to fix Tejas was always relieved at the border. The missile program had no anesthetic, so it healed properly. And the structures followed the incentives. Missiles, one integrated complex in Hyderabad, user and maker locked together, iteration welcomed, a failed test is Tuesday. Fighters, a monopoly manufacturer with a guaranteed customer, a design agency without a factory, an engine lab without an aircraft, and a customer with a foreign catalog in its drawer. HAL assembled Soviet and British jets under license for decades, profitable, comfortable, and fatal to the muscle of original development. Where Kalam's labs had to invent, HAL only ever had to assemble. Fast forward to today, and the twins' report cards write the ending themselves. The missile twin, recent months. Agni 5 tested with multiple independently targetable warheads, Mission Divyastra. A scramjet combustor burning for 1,200 seconds, hypersonic cruise territory only a couple of nations have touched. And in Operation Sindoor, the Akash system, 96% Indian, earning a stellar performance citation in combat, then a fresh export pipeline, as we covered in our arms dealer episode. The fighter twin, same months, the Air Force chief, on camera, promised 11 Tejas Mark I Alphas by February. Not a single one is ready. HAL, he said, is just not in mission mode. Weeks earlier, a Coast Guard helicopter crash had grounded all 330 of HAL's Dhruv helicopters, Army, Navy, Coast Guard aviation paralyzed at once. Even when American engine deliveries resumed, jets sat undelivered. Integration snags, software, radar. In fairness, GE's engines did arrive 2 years late. HAL's alibi is partly real. But alibis don't fill squadrons, and the Air Force is at its weakest fighter strength in decades. 1983's twins, 43 years later. One deters two nuclear neighbors. The other triggered a crisis of confidence in its only customer. But, quietly, the ending may be changing, because India finally began treating the jet like a missile. Look at what's happened in just 18 months. May 2025. The government broke HAL's 70-year fighter monopoly. Private giants Larsen and Toubro and Tata can now compete to build the next-generation AMCA stealth fighter. Competition. The one medicine the missile complex never needed and the aircraft complex never got. Consultants are restructuring HAL itself around platforms, not geography. And the engine, the deepest wound since the Marut died for lack of one, is finally being attacked at the root. France's Safran has offered to co-develop a brand new 110 kilonewton fighter engine with India's Engine Lab. 100% technology transfer, including the crown jewels, the hot section, the single crystal blades. The metallurgy no one shares. The intellectual property, India's. Rolls-Royce, sensing the moment, counter-offered an even bigger engine on the same terms. Even the once-doomed Kaveri lit its new afterburner in 2026, headed for a drone. Denial-driven urgency, single-mission focus, competition, ownership of the full technology chain. Read that list twice. It's Kalam's 1983 Playbook, applied to aircraft 40 years late. So, why can India build missiles but not fighter jets? Not because of talent. The same national gene pool produced both twins. Not merely physics. China's decades of engine pain prove jets are brutal, but China got there. Difficulty explains delay, not paralysis. The real answer is the experiment's true finding. India succeeds at what it is not allowed to buy. Missiles were denied, so India mastered them. Jets could always be imported, so India assembled them. Incentives, not ability, wrote both destinies. Which means the next chapter is a choice. The monopoly is broken. The engine deals are on the table. The playbook is proven and sitting in the missile complex's filing cabinets. Somewhere around 2035, an AMCA prototype is supposed to fly with an engine part born in India. If it does, the experiment of 1983 finally ends, with both twins alive. Until then, remember the lesson: 40 years bought at full price. A country doesn't get the weapons it wants. It gets the weapons it refuses to live without.